When you build a process and you want to get a consistent result, the raw material on the way in has to be homogeneous. That's the basis of all of our manufacturing engineering. In the case of manufacturing of plastics, you get little pellets of plastic and they have to all be the same material, the same color, no contaminant in there. And when we build a scientific process that consistently makes a good part, it'll do it every time. People don't work that way. The advantage of homeschooling is that the parent or who is ever doing the homeschooling, maybe grandparent, can customize the curriculum to the individual. That's super powerful.
Welcome to Homeschool Talks, a podcast by HSLDA. This is a show about all things homeschooling, from practical tips to inspiring stories and everything in between. You can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes as well as upcoming guests and topics, sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we hope you enjoyed the program. Here's your host, Jim Mason.
Hi, my name is Jim Mason, president of Homeschool Legal Defense Association. This is another episode of Homeschool Talks, where I get to talk to people who interest me and have interesting things to say in the world of homeschooling. I'm really excited today to introduce you to and chat with Greg Heinemann. He's a homeschool dad married to Rebecca. They homeschool 5 children. Greg is an entrepreneur with a background in finance, commercial real estate, and manufacturing. And after selling one of his businesses, Greg has shifted gears from being a CEO to an investor and advisor and to invest in ministry. We've had several conversations about some really big ideas that Greg and his team is working on now. And we'd like to hear from Greg himself, some of those big ideas. Greg, first tell us about your homeschool experience. Where do you and Rebecca homeschool and how long and those kind of things?
My oldest child is 18 and she just graduated. So I guess we really started homeschooling 18 years ago. We don't take the approach that schooling starts in kindergarten, but it starts at birth. I mean, you learn the simple things, most kids do, but I mean, my second oldest had the entire map of the US memorized by age 2, right? And so, I mean, we just taught each kid at the speed that they can go. And we've been teaching for 18 years, the oldest, and I guess 10 years the youngest.
So when we talked before, you told me some of your business background. Now, you were up in Minnesota, now you're down in Tennessee. What did you learn in your business experience that would be of interest to homeschooling parents who want to raise up, children to kind of be both productive adults, but also to be the person that God intended them to be?
I mean, I learned a lot of things. I think one of the things that might not be well known to everybody, most entrepreneurial business will take a kid who knows nothing of the business, but has all the soft skills. They have a good attitude. They have a good work ethic. They know how to learn. They know how to solve problems. I think a lot of the kids that we've hired right out of high school that have been very successful have had those attributes. And they might know nothing about manufacturing at all. But viewing it as their responsibility to go solve the problem, to go get the answers that they need, as opposed to just expect everything to be kind of handed to them on a platter, very, very helpful. Bigger companies might not have that same approach. They might want to see certain academic background and experience. But I think if you're talking about entrepreneurial companies, we always have to put the best person in the role that they're going to make the biggest impact. We don't have the luxury of having, endless talent pools. So we tend to be entrepreneurial in how we hire, how we train, and how we promote, which is a great opportunity for kids that maybe don't fit the blue chip paper model that a big business is looking for, the right undergrad, now an advanced degree. But if it's a kid that's really smart, we've had a lot of guys that really didn't like school, sitting with their hands folded in a desk in front of them. That wasn't their gig, whether they were homeschooled or not. But then they come to work and they love work. It's interesting. They have authority after, they've proven that they're capable, and they really get a chance to spread their wings and become fantastic employees. I think another thing, we loved people that were risk takers. Now there's foolish risk. You can drive your car at 100 miles an hour and that's risky, but the benefit is little and the downside's great. But people who make the decision to say, I'm not going to follow the herd to some kind of a degree and I'm going to do it a different way. Well, they get into the business and they say, hey, maybe we should do what we've always been doing a different way too. And that level of entrepreneurial thinking is critical in innovating. And when you're a small business, the competitors and big companies, they've got the balance sheet or the financial wherewithal. They've got the power of brand. They have some very, very expensive, very, very talented people. And so for an entrepreneurial business to compete, the kind of 1-2 punch is that you're very innovative and you work your butt off. And so those kids that are kind of alternative thinkers and willing to consider different ways of building a career are typically more useful than those that aren't.
And where does homeschooling fit into that, do you think?
Well, I think the beauty of homeschool is that the parents have already rejected kind of the normal way of doing something. So the kids have already had kind of an institution that the rest of the kids followed, dispelled from their life. And so they tend to be born into entrepreneurial thinking or alternative thinking that way. But often just the children that we see coming out of homeschool are they're better critical thinkers. So that's a key component. They often have better work ethic because the parents instilled that in them through the homeschooling process. They know how to get information and solve problems. They don't expect everything to be delivered to them. I mean, one of the things I love about at least how we home educate is take math. You can run into mathematical problems in your day-to-day life that you have to solve. And the math problem itself isn't presented. A real world situation is presented. And then they have to figure out, how does the math apply to this instance, right? Consider that compared to the classroom, where at best they have a word problem that's a paragraph long. And somewhere in the paragraph is all the information they need to solve the problem. That's a very artificial environment. The real world doesn't work that way. So I think a homeschooler is better prepared to think outside the box, to work hard, and to solve problems that are presented to them.
So I don't know about you, but all of my children are exactly the same and respond exactly the same way to exactly the same stimulus, education, and curriculum. Is that your experience?
Not like that. You got some good kids, I guess, if they
No.
all work.
Okay, it's not true.
But yeah, no, I mean, every individual is unique. We're not homogenous. I think one of the fundamental problems with a classroom style educational model is when you build a process and you want to get a consistent result, the raw material on the way in has to be homogenous. That's the basis of all of our manufacturing engineering. In the case of manufacturing of plastics, you get little pellets of plastic and they have to all be the same material, the same color, no contaminant in there. And when we build a scientific process that consistently makes a good part, it'll do it every time. People don't work that way. The advantage of homeschooling is that the parent or who is ever doing the homeschooling, maybe grandparent, can customize the curriculum to the individual. That's super powerful because you are now tailoring an educational system. And that might be the learning style of the child. Are they kinesthetic? Are they auditory? Are they visual? So how do I bring education into formats that's designed for how they learn? The speed they move at. I have 5 kids that come from the same 2 parents. Their abilities are very different. Their learning styles are different. So the speed we push our best academic student is very different than the speed we push a lower performing academic student. And then finally, like, their interests are different and their talents are different. So the speed that they can move at in some subjects is going to be faster because they have natural gifting there. Other subjects are going to be more of a challenge. You move slower there. That's really hard. Even the best intended, smartest teacher is going to have a very challenging time doing that in an environment where you have best case 15, 20 kids, maybe it's some form of private school and it has lower density. You still have 20 different learners in there. They don't have the same IQ. They don't have the same interest. They don't have the same learning style. It's really hard to bring good education to that model.
And how has that played out in your family and in your business hiring?
In the case of family, um, each child has their own custom plan. So my second oldest, my oldest son, he's very academic. So he's getting what we mostly would call a classical education, and he's doing about 2 times the coursework that any of our other children do because he catches on quickly. He works super hard, at that, and he loves that kind of academic environment. My second oldest child despises the academic environment. He's kind of our hard body that wants to work and do stuff, that's challenging physically. And he's not unintelligent at all. He just doesn't have a whole lot of interest in most academic subjects. So his homeschool day, 4 days a week, involves 4 to 5 hours down in our mechanic shop, learning from a veteran mechanic how to do mechanic type stuff. Now, will he go pro as a mechanic? I don't know, but I know that those skills are useful to have, and he's continuing to build on work ethic that we've built. He's self-motivated. He's up at 6 a.m. every morning and gets down there and puts in, his shift, and then gets back to the house to do the homeschooling that's required because, he still has to learn how to do math and stuff. But like for him, as we talk about math, we'll use more, fractions are all related to sockets and things like that in his world really matter. So now he's tuned into, how do these work, right? Um, and some of our other children are more artistic, so they get more artistic training, I guess. And whether I doubt any of them go pro doing music or anything, but our oldest is very seriously being courted by our pastor's son. He wants to be a pastor. And so, being able to play the piano at a small church is a big asset, right? Um, and so, those are skills that they'll take with them the rest of their lives. In terms of hiring, I mean, we hire anybody, that meets our criteria. Most, because about 2% of the population is homeschooling. Most of the people we're hiring didn't come from a homeschool background. But when we interview some that do, they typically blow away their interview, just because they're better prepared.
Hmm. You mentioned that your daughter is courting with a pastor's son. How important in your homeschool world is your Christian faith?
Well, I mean, that's number one. I mean, ultimately, as a parent, your first priority is to disciple these children in the faith. When we first looked at homeschooling, my wife had been homeschooled and she had a very bad school experience. And so she wanted to homeschool from the get-go. I was a little more hesitant. I had gone to pretty good private school, not good morally, but good academically. And I placed a lot of emphasis on academic learning. And I was a little worried about, like, what are we going to do when some of these kids outpace mom's knowledge, for math and some of the sciences and such. So I was very hesitant about that. But we just always wanted adults to be kind of the influence in our kids' life more than peers, because I was really worried about socialization, right?
Mm.
What are they going to learn from these other kids?
So you and I started out in the homeschooling adventure in a very similar fashion. My wife, when we were still engaged, said, when we have kids, we are going to homeschool them. And I knew kind of from context what that must mean, but I didn't really know anybody who homeschooled and wasn't aware that there was a thing, out there that people were doing. And so I kind of, for the same reasons and with the same kind of caution, said, okay, well, we can try it, for a bit, and always had kind of an escape hatch. How long was it for you before you were sold out on the idea?
It's a good question. I mean, quickly I was sold on like elementary because it was all within my wife's ability to teach. But I kind of continued to hold, what are we going to do when we get to high school? I think, the beauty of capitalism is the market developed while my kids were going through school, where there were robust, online academic, situations where you had teachers that were capable and knowledgeable in these advanced subject matters that then could teach. So like I said, my brightest child by about 7th grade was almost entirely outsourced to, that environment.
Mm.
I use the analogy of it's like armor. When a child is young, even if they have the faith, their armor is like, leather armor. It's not robust. It's not fully ready to deal with the fullness of evil that's out there. But as they grow, your job is to sharpen their skills and harden their armor, right? And so by the time, they're 18 and maybe you're sending them off to some form of secondary education, they should be ready to fight. But a 12-year-old's not ready to fight.
Well, now that you've moved down to Tennessee and you've moved into sort of a different stage in your career, what are the kinds of things that you're working on now?
So there's kind of two big, I guess you'd say, philanthropic or things related to the faith. One of them is we're trying to get a company going that will create a homeschool curriculum that's custom but mass customized. Sounds like an oxymoron, but I'll get into that. For even a family that's maybe a single parent, doesn't have a lot of time to homeschool, but that it can help he or she effectively homeschool their children. It all starts by hard profiling. It's a word no one likes, but it is effective. And what you do is you have to sort the kids into little groupings. I'll just call them homogenies, where they're all super similar. So take one of my children, my wife creates a custom curriculum for that child, and it would be highly effective for other children that are super similar, same learning style, maybe a few IQ points, maybe the same interests, the same background experience, and so on and so forth. There's probably 10 different areas we'll have to sort through, once we fully figure this out. But then once you have them grouped so that there's many people, but in that same homogeny, you can then assign, we'll just call it a mom, but it's like a homogeny champion that treats that whole group of people, but like they're an individual, and creates custom curriculum for them and their learning style. Then we can use, the power of technology to have advanced analytics to say, one, is it being effective on the whole? Two, are there people inside that homogeny that aren't getting the results we would expect compared to the peers? And then we're probably dealing with something in the personal life or something of that nature that's not working. But you're constantly trying to improve each individual homogeny so that you have this custom curriculum, but it's mass customized, so it's affordable and it saves probably mom a ton of time, right? I mean, when I look at my wife's full-time job and hobby, it is homeschooling. I mean, the job is homeschooling and the hobby is building these curriculums, for next year and everything to try to optimize the education for the child. That's wonderful and probably optimal, but it's not realistic for how a lot of people live, right? And I also think it's a big ask for a family to say, hey, maybe there's two incomes, let's give up one so we can homeschool. They don't think they can exist with one income. In the case of a single parent, they can't give up the one income they have. So how do you homeschool kind of nights and weekends? Well, we all know the beauty of homeschooling is it takes way less time than a traditional school environment because it's way better organized. It's more efficient. But all this time spent gathering curriculum in order to optimize results is probably time that they don't have. So if we can bring that piece to them, they'll have significant success. So with that, we've got this idea. When I sold my business, I set a tremendous amount of money on the side, earmarked kind of to go to this, but I need a leader that's going to help me build it. As of right now, I don't feel like I'm called to be that leader. I can help ideate. I mean, our organization was over 300 people, so pretty good size. I can help, create that vision with them, and I can help teach them how to do pieces of the puzzle they don't know. But I don't know a lot about assessments other than the ones we used for business. I've never spent any time in the kind of educational world. So I'd have to gain a lot of knowledge. There's somebody out there somewhere that would love to be part of this that I think is designed to lead this, and I just have to find them.
Well, I hope that somebody out there listening today is paying attention and has that skill set and passion, because as you mentioned, the homeschooling started out with very limited resources that were built, especially for moms, in the early days, moms and their kids. But today the resources are plentiful, and the homeschooling world has changed a lot, as you mentioned. I mean, I think it probably started out primarily as single income, married folks who could kind of afford to, forego one of the parents working, and a really interested and passionate mom who could spend the time. And as you mentioned, homeschool moms put in more than full-time homeschooling, and that's a big commitment that a lot of them put in. And so your tool, as envisioned, is just kind of a next stage advancement in resources available to the homeschooling community that can kind of cut through a lot of the chaff and help parents narrow in more quickly into what it is their child needs and get that to them more efficiently. Is that
Well, I think it's really going to be hard for any automated system to beat a highly engaged parent, right? Uh, that level of customization, daily feedback of a human mind thinking about the problems, machine learning can do a lot, but like I'm never going to bet I can beat a mom that cares, all right, and is highly engaged. What I'm trying to target are people that right now would never consider homeschooling because they don't think that they can. And I'm trying to bring them a tool where, see, imagine you're a single mom. You have to have your job. You see that your schools aren't doing a good job educating your children. You might see that they're learning horrible things at school, whether from teachers nowadays or from other kids in the class, and you don't like that. You can't afford a different school, whether it's a private school or a charter school, or maybe you have your kid in private school. I went to a private school where kids are doing drugs and all kinds of things during school. So, but what is your solution? You don't think you can homeschool. You don't have the time. You have to keep the income. That's who I'm targeting to say this system will help you succeed, right? And there may be some current homeschooling parents that see value in it and use it as like, this is additional information to help us do well. But I think the big thing is doing that assessment, breaking down this giant elephant, the adage, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. It's even hard to imagine eating an elephant one bite at a time, right? So helping break down this big, curriculum plan, career path for the child into, well, what do I need to do like Tuesday, right? Bringing it down to that simplistic of a level and bringing reporting that matters to the parent, that matters to the child, that, they do all kinds of things in video games now as psychologists to make the game actually be satisfying, right? I mean, this is a terrible story, but during COVID, we had an employee, a young guy, and he was a B-level employee. He wasn't a rock star, but he was solid. And this is a guy who could have made a career in our industry and everything. Well, he quit when he found out he could get all this money from the government for not working. And we weren't terribly busy at the time because some of our customers were down from COVID and everything. But we got busy again a few months later and said, hey, we need you to come back to work. And he said, I really loved my job and I really do want to come back to work. But right now I got all this money in the bank and I got this new video game I'm trying to beat. And he goes on and on about how great the video game is, right? And it's like, this dude is being robbed of learning how to work, right? He should be leveling up his life. Instead, he's leveling up his video game, right? But we need to take that knowledge that made it so satisfying to him, he'd give up real achievement for the synthetic achievement in a game and bring that into actual achievement with us as the homeschooling program, right? Help mom feel like she's achieving because she's helping accomplish these things, for her kid. The kid's leveling up. He or she is accomplishing these things. That's the type of system we need to bring to these people that don't think it's possible. And once we have kind of our beta group of, I'm going to say my favorite customer is going to be a young single mother, didn't graduate high school. All right. Because when she's successful with my program, y'all have no excuse, right? Everyone can do it if she can do it. Because that's the person society would say she has no chance, right? Well, we're going to give her a chance.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think COVID changed a lot more than what we know even now. And I think it changed. I already think it changed a lot, but I think we're going to learn a lot more about how, the world shutting down in the way that it did change things. And one of the ways it changed things is everybody got a taste of what it would be like if there were no public schools in America. And so that single mom that you're talking about today, she probably had to go back to work, but she has a taste of what it was like to have her kid at home. It wasn't always a satisfying experience for everyone, but that's another aspect of the post-COVID world. The world of homeschooling is more open psychologically and emotionally to parents who would never have considered it before. So having an additional tool that could make it possible for those folks seems like a really exciting innovation.
Yeah, and people would say this is crazy, but I honestly think, let's say we could just have this whole system magically created and it's robust. So the system works, and people are using it and all this. what percentage of American schooled kids would their parents right now put into this system that provides an equal or greater education than what they're currently getting, but where they have some control,
Hmm.
right? If the cost were, let's say, $500 a year per kid, what percent you think we'd get?
I'm a little probably on the pessimistic side, so I would probably pick a low number.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick 30%, which is a huge number.
That's
And
a
the
big
reason I'm
number.
going to pick it is because the schools already are terrible, okay, in terms of performance. All right. But now they're getting preposterous. I mean, the stuff that they're pushing, the social agenda, even parents with no faith, they're like, wait a minute. I thought this was like about reading and writing and arithmetic like stuff, right? And now there's all this other stuff. But they don't have a solution. They don't think homeschool's an option because they're both working, whatever, right? But as more and more people switch over, there'll be more and more momentum. And so I really think the power of customized education is so great that the results we will get will grossly outperform, even good private schools. And so I don't think it's a pipe dream to say we could get lots of them. Now, if we get 30%, they're going to try to outlaw us. I know that, but I mean, that's when I know we're really killing it, right?
Well, that's my job. See, so
Yes, that's right.
you do what you do, and we will be here with a robust defense to prevent the outlawing part. That's what we at HSLDA love to do. Is we love to mix it up with officials who want to outlaw us.
And I know we're going to need you. That's why I support you all.
Okay, and we appreciate it. You had said earlier when I asked you what you're up to now that there were two main things. What's the second main thing?
Yeah. So the other thing is, I actually think that the American church has a fundamental piece of church wrong, which is fellowship. The way most American families live today, we're all these isolated little free agents. 100 years ago, everybody attended a church that was within walking distance of their house. Maybe if you were on a farm, you'd have to ride your horse or take a buggy or something. But everybody was close. They were all neighbors. And so the fellowship component was there. But with the advent of the automobile and whatnot, I think as families, we've become kind of these free agents that do whatever they want, whenever they want. Maybe it's individualism that's run too far. But I don't think that's how we were designed to live. When my wife was younger and we had little kids, like maybe a 5, 3, 1-year-old type age range, I noticed I would come home from work, a long work day, maybe 10 or 12 hours. And in my work day, I didn't have a lot of time to sit and think about problems because I was constantly meeting with people. So I would process on my drive home. And then once I was home, everything that happened during the day and think through and creative problem solve during that time. Well, I'd walk in the door and my wife was desperate, and she's an introvert. Right? But she's desperate to have a conversation with an adult because the 5-year-old just doesn't suffice. Right? And so I get blitzed with 10,000 words she's looking to get out while I'm trying to think about something that is more interesting to me than whatever she was talking about. The neighbor adopted a child and they would go on walks. And I noticed the days that she went for walks with the neighbor, she was much more content when I came home. And so I started thinking, why is this kind of lack of harmony going on? And I realized, God's design had us in community, whether it's, Abraham and all of his tents and, his manservants, maidservants and family or whatnot. We were designed to live in this community where there would be other women that are interested in the things that she's interested in with kids at the same age that all need to get their words out. And, I see that now here. Some of the women with younger kids get a chance to go to the park or come to our pool, and they just get to talk with other adults because a 3-year-old and 1-year-old just don't do it, right? And so those opportunities really are only made by proximity. It's too hard to load up 2, 3 kids in the minivan and drive for 20 minutes to a friend's house. Sure, you do it once a week, but you kind of need it daily. So anyway, that's kind of the other project. It's not as grandiose, although if we're as effective with it, we'll probably try to, tell others about what we did and the deliberate steps we're taking.
Well, let's go back to your other project. What kind of person are you looking for? You've thought this through. What's your ideal guy or gal?
I think ideally it's somebody who spent some time in education, but I'd love to see somebody that has proven success at growing an organization, like casting a vision, growing it. Maybe they sold something off in the space. I'd want to see somebody that is passionate about homeschooling, obviously, because I can pay market wage. Whatever you're making right now, I can pay that. But this is going to take a lot more effort than what pay is going to deliver, right? I need somebody that is passionate about seeing the world change, seeing America change, seeing the next generation. Here's the reality. Guys like me for the past 100 years have focused on commerce, okay? And we let the least qualified people educate America's children, and now we're reaping those rewards, right? So if we're going to change this, we need to get highly competent people engaged in the process of creating education for America that parents can opt into and produce a significantly different result than what they're currently getting in terms of both the education, the building of these soft skills that are critical, and also the value system. There was once a time where I think if you ask people, hey, what do you want out of your job? They'll say, I want an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. If you were really to dig into America today, what do you want? I want the most pay for doing nothing. That's the new standard, right? These values are incapable of producing an America that we know or knew. It will lead to America's failure. And guys like gals like myself need to get involved in education, or all the wealth that we've created is going to be worthless.
Well, that's a pretty good summation of why many people homeschool to begin with, right? Just to instill in their children both kind of normal educational stuff, but also to train them up to be virtuous citizens who can contribute. And that's a big part of our Christian faith, leads us in that direction. But it is also a big part of what many of us perceive what's been lost in our American civic culture apart from the faith. And it sounds like you're trying to kind of restore that on both levels.
I think the individual is the building block of a free society, right? And the individual being educated is kind of critical for the society to be free and performing. Every society in all time and all culture only exists if it can protect itself from other societies, right? And so, you have to be robustly capable. You have to have an economy that can defend yourself. You have to have a military that can defend yourself. And you need free people with these type of, motivations and aspirations to do that. You can't take more than you provide and expect the country to succeed. It will be destroyed in the long run. It's just a question of time. And so to me, I want to bring this education to every individual child because I think that it's the best chance that they have at personal success. In this world, there'll be a faith component to the education. If you want my super cheap education, we're not going to count how many mommies somebody has. We'll count how many disciples Jesus has with him. I don't know, but the faith will be interwoven in this worldview because it's critical in order to have success for the child. And if you have enough success for each individual, you end up with a society that's successful.
Well, it says on my cheat sheet here that you like to hunt and fish.
I do.
And I, just as an aside, I was scheduled to meet you in person just about a year, not quite a year ago, down in Florida. And I was supposed to fly in Sunday before a hurricane zeroed in on
where we were staying.
Did you get out of there okay and all that? That was, it was pretty, I was in the Navy. And so in the Navy on a ship, they always tell you, it doesn't matter what you think, get the ship out of the harbor and run away from the storm. And then you watch the storm. And sometimes the storm doesn't hit the harbor where you were. And sometimes it does, but that's okay. You don't want your ships to get sunk by a hurricane. So I was watching this hurricane from when it was way out in the Atlantic and the projected chart. And then there was a day or two where they were saying it was going to miss. And then, the eye of the hurricane hit the house.
Yeah, that's not an exaggeration. Yeah, I think the first landfall was about 7 miles north of where we were staying. So I mean, it was kind of ground zero, and the joke, in fishing, on the front side of a front, like a storm front, the fishing's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to leave till I fished the front edge of a hurricane because I just had to see how good it could be, right? And we did have 2 days before the storm hit was pretty crazy fishing, but we actually fished right up until Governor DeSantis gave the evacuation order, and then we obeyed and left the water, and just drove home. But yeah, it was horrible for those communities that were there. I mean, a lot of devastation on Sanibel, and obviously Fort Myers Beach will never look the same. Hopefully they're able to rebuild bigger and better. But yeah, I guess God had a plan, and it wasn't for us to fish at that moment in time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was something to watch. And what about the hunting part? Look, I've tried to schedule some appointments with you in the past, and
I'm always hunting.
you're always hunting. Not always hunting. I mean, you're sometimes innovating and entrepreneurialing and stuff like that, but occasionally you're always hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fall has a lot of hunting. We actually run a ministry. So for pastors that don't have a lot of income, we host them. We have 2,700 acres in Tennessee, and it's run like a high-end hunting lodge, but it's all charitable. So we don't charge a fee. It costs $10,000 or more if you were to book a hunt at a place like what we have. And we just, take pastors that have low income but would love to hunt and try to put them on deer of a lifetime, make some memories for them. And I keep saying I'm not going to full-time guide, but I end up full-time guiding every fall. So from about November 1st until the end of the first week in January, it's like a 3:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. job. And I mean, I love it. I love serving. I love ministering to these dudes. I mean, just consider, like, their whole life people are taking from them. They're ministering to others. So just giving them that kind of break and relief, it's really satisfying to me. So yeah, I do that. I do that all fall. I do a little bit of bird hunting. I do a fair bit of fishing up in Canada. We have a place in Canada, and there's a lodge that I adore that's in Ontario that I spend a few weeks at, and we do one of the trips there. I bring pastors just like down here, no cost, world-class fishing. So yeah, I mean, I love the outdoors, but as I've gotten older, when I was younger, I wanted to kill the biggest one. I wanted to catch the biggest one. It was like I don't know if it was a status symbol, but it was like an accomplishment, right? And I mean, honestly, now, like I just was talking to Spence right before you came. I've got a bear hut booked in Alaska for a pastor and myself, and I'm debating not even shooting a bear and bringing someone else to shoot the second bear, because like the process of pulling the trigger, I can shoot. So the process of pulling the trigger is a foregone conclusion. If I shoot it, I'm killing it. But I get so much more satisfaction out of watching someone else be able to have that experience, and kind of make a memory of a lifetime for them just means more to me. So the only hesitation that I have with this bear thing, it isn't that I don't shoot a bear. It's that I'm worried I can't hunt with both of them at the same time. And I want to be there when they get it, because that's the most exciting part, right? So if I bring two of them, I might miss one of them getting it, but it's still probably worth it. So I think assuming they have room in camp for me to be, they have what they call a companion. Often it'd be a wife or something, or maybe a child. But I would just be a companion along on the hunt, but they would get to get the bears. So I do some different hunts, I guess. But everything for me now is really about being an ambassador to the outdoors and helping others that wouldn't have the ability to do it at an elite level. Nothing that I do is enjoyable unless it's elite. And I mean elite. If I cook a meal and it's not the best one you've ever had, I'm kind of disappointed. At least for that food type, right? I mean, it's hard to make, I don't know. It's hard to make a piece of pork or chicken compete with a piece of beef or a good piece of fish, right? But if it's the best pork you've ever had, I'll settle for that if I'm cooking pork that way. So like with all this stuff, the hunting, the fishing, the homeschool, the community, I want it all to be world class, or I'm just not satisfied. And I guess it's the way God made me. And I also look at it, Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. So I treat it like Jesus is showing up to hunt, or he's showing up to fish, and I got to make it amazing because I wouldn't want to let him down. And I guess the downside when you achieve a lot by the world standards, who exactly are the least of these? There are very few people that I need to do favors for me, right? So I just think probably that means just about everybody. So I better always be on my A, you know, give it my all.
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting your wife, Rebecca, here so our office at Homeschool Legal Defense Association is shared with the campus of Patrick Henry College. And I was eating lunch by myself one day over at the dining hall, and she came over and introduced herself to me. And it sounds like you may have a student, one of your more academically inclined students, interested in coming here as well.
He is interested. Yeah. I hope he does what he needs to do to get in, but he's smart and he's a super hard worker. So I'm pretty confident.
Well, that's a combination that I know PHC is always looking for. Well, it's been great chatting with you. Any other last thoughts?
So like one thing we didn't cover, but that I think is important for today's homeschoolers is to consider non-4-year degree career. So, there still is, homeschoolers have rejected a lot of the schooling philosophy. But one thing that I still see hanging on a little bit too hard is this notion that your kid has to go get a 4-year degree. Okay. It's 30 years outdated in its thinking. Sure, in 1970, everybody that got a college degree got a great job, but you only had the top 10, 15, maybe 20% of kids going to college. And of course, that 85th percentile on up is going to get good jobs because they're really talented. The talent is what leads to the success, as long as you have the soft skills and everything, not the education. Okay. And, if we really believe in economics, supply and demand drive price. Okay. There's an increasing demand for things like the trades, plumber, electrician, welder, appliance repair, HVAC, all this stuff. There's increasing demand because population's increasing, but the supply is shrinking. Okay. That means, now we're going to get nerdy here, the equilibrium price goes up. That means wages, pay, annual compensation go up. Second point, if you become a geneticist, how are you going to start your own business? Dude, it's super hard. You either got to find some rich person that's going to fund you in doing your research that hopefully breaks through and you become some big guy. Okay. But it's so easy to start your own HVAC company or electrician or any of these things. You buy a truck, you already have your tools. Okay. So career pathing, you go get a job and learn how to do whatever it is that you want to do. You have a stellar reputation for working hard, being respectful, being reliable. Every time a customer comes to the site, whether it's the homeowner, it's the job soup, you shake their hand, you thank them for their business. If you need something, our company, don't pitch yourself. Our company is going to take care of you. I really appreciate it. All right. And you get a business card. After 5 years of doing this, right, and you've saved a whole bunch of money and you've got no debt, it's easy to go on your own. And you call up every one of these dudes and say, hey, I'm here, I'm doing this, and I'd love to serve you. You just need a few jobs at the rates you get when you own the company to make up for what you've lost. And boom, you can grow from there. All right. I just talked to a kid who's probably 25, making way over 6 figures, working for his dad's HVAC company. Okay. He's going to inherit that business, right? No debt, making better pay than most 4-year degree programs. And he's going into the next 30 years where there's more dudes retiring than entering the business at this point. Now, more guys can enter, but they're not going to enter with 10 or 15 years experience. They're not going to enter with customer lists. The dude is going to kill it. Now, people are going to say, hey, this guy's a failure because he didn't get a 4-year degree. But it's funny. Failure often drives a new pickup truck and has a new boat behind it. So I guess if that's what failure looks like, maybe it's good to be a failure. Okay, because a master's degree barista doesn't look like success to me. So I think we've already rejected as homeschoolers the way that people school. We need to reject how careers are done. And then the last piece of the puzzle is look at all these big companies. They want to make you swallow their values. If you're running your own business or you're working for a small business and you're doing HVAC installation or electrician or whatever, 50% of the market would rather buy from you because of your faith or your philosophy or whatever. Of the remaining 50%, a quarter of them just want good service and a fair price. So you got 75% of the market. Maybe 25% of the market doesn't want to buy from you, but you know what? They don't pay their bills and have no money. So why did you want to serve them anyway? We've got to be more entrepreneurial. We're entrepreneurial with education. You got to be more entrepreneurial with career pathing. It's where the opportunity is. Society isn't going to have leverage. You can make far more money. Look at it like this. I just bought a business, okay? A dude has a 2-year technical degree, worked for 15 years for a major company you all would have heard of doing this trade, all right? He then went out on his own, started the business, and 10 years later, I paid over $2 million for his company, all right? And he still has a great job working in the company and owns 20% of it. All right. That dude killed it. 2-year degree. He's a nice guy. He works hard. He's not a 140 IQ. He's a normal dude. So point is, there's tons of opportunity out there, but you got to take that alternative thinking that you took to education to career pathing.
So you know who Mike Rowe is?
Yeah.
So I just feel like I just got done talking to Mike Rowe here.
I mean, the dude is right. The dude is right. And maybe homeschoolers don't love, TV personalities. I don't know. Does this make me a TV personality? I'm not even sure. But if we believe in economics, the argument is clear. The argument is clear. So, and if you talk to any trade guy, I mean, we've got feels like 10 houses we've been building here on the property. So I have lots of experience with trades recently. Any of them will take a kid, no experience, but that says, look, I'm going to show up and I'm going to work hard. The answer is hired. They're that desperate. So getting on is not hard either. Go work for someone, get some experience. And then if you think you can go on your own, if you've got that mentality, do it. If not, there's oodles of great jobs out there just in those fields where you can make a living, raise a family.
Yep. Honest work of any kind is still virtuous.
100%. And it's more lucrative. I mean, that's what I keep getting at. It's better. You're getting paid well to do it. It's not this mentality from 30, 40 years ago that it's a worse paying job and the college leads to better one. And people really need to analyze, you got your gross pay, then they take your taxes out, then you got to make your school payments. And after that, that's really your discretionary income. Okay. Analyze what that looks like over a 30 or 40 year career. And you compare a trade to that. I have a friend who's a master plumber. He says master plumbers, which I think was 7 years experience through the union, were making $150 an hour, $142 an hour, something like that. That's a lot of money, man. So, I mean, it takes a really, really, really good job, advanced job to beat that. I had a minor surgery a few weeks ago. Surgeon asked what I did after we conversed a little bit for a living. I said, I'm retired. He looked at my chart. He said, we're the same age. I said, I know. I started out, in college thinking I should be a doctor. My advisor, I brought him this mathematical analysis, which is exactly what I just showed, a little bit more sophisticated math than just that. But the idea was I'm in school for a long time, not making money. Then I get out and I'm in residency, still not making much money, but now I got these payments. Then I make more money, but the government taxes the heck out of me, and I still got these payments. And then some point in the future, I make a fair bit of money, but I'm old. And so you looked at the math and I said, what did I do wrong with my math? Because this looks like a terrible decision. And he said, is this how you see the world? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, you use logic and math, reasoning to make decisions. Well, how else would you make a decision? And he said, I think you should consider business, not medicine. He was right. But my point is America still thinks that doctors top job. Now, if you're going to love helping people and all that, and you basically want to be a public servant because it's not as lucrative as you think, then do it. Maybe you're called to medicine. But don't do it because you think it's the better career path. Because honestly, you play your cards right in any of the trades I listed, and there's probably 50 more, you're going to kill it over the doctor. You work hard, you build a small business, and you'll generate wealth. And honestly, I think it's way more fun. You're building something instead of just working in a machine.
Well, I know some of my kids have headed that way. Some for college, and some just like to work. Once again, I'm Jim Mason, president of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and this has been another edition of Homeschool Talks. If you like what we do, You can go to our website at hslda.org and either join to be a part of it or donate, or just take advantage of the many resources that we have available for homeschool families just like yours. And if you have an interest in what Greg has been talking about, we'll put an email address that you can let us know, and I'll be happy to pass it on to Greg as well.
Thank you.
Well, my guest today is Greg Heinemann, entrepreneur, businessman, big thinker, big doer in a lot of fronts. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. We'll see you, Jim.
Every week, HSLDA hears from hundreds of homeschool families, many of whom are facing hostility from school officials or discrimination from colleges and employers. We've helped single parents facing criminal charges for homeschooling their children, families traumatized by wrongful CPS investigations, and even a grandmother harassed by the state for homeschooling her granddaughter. By donating to HSLDA, you can help make homeschooling possible for families like these and enable our work to preserve freedom for future generations. Give today at hslda.org/donate. That's hslda.org/donate. Thanks for listening to this episode of Homeschool Talks. If you've enjoyed this conversation, will you do us a favor by sharing it with a friend or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts? As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes, as well as upcoming guests and topics, you can sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. That's all for now. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll see you next time.